The views and opinions expressed on Explorers Secrets of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Secrets of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth till it goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 69. Tonight, as always, I am joined by my best friend and co-host, Les Kavich. How are you this evening, Les?
Good. Was the video already done playing when you started talking?
Yeah.
Because it was
still a blank screen on my end.
Unbelievable. This program, I swear to God. I don't know if you heard, but it started playing on YouTube in the background. If you heard like a double audio.
I didn't hear that at all.
Oh, okay. No. All right. Yeah, it was still playing. When you started talking, it was still going through the video. I'm like, why is he talking now? It didn't stop yet. But technical issues, as always. We have Cindy joining in on YouTube this time. I think she usually used to always come in on Facebook, didn't you, Cindy? Well, either way, you're here. That's all that matters. So other than the little technical snafu there, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So go through your normal spiel, tell the audience where they can reach us.
Oh, I will. If they don't know already. You could reach us on Facebook at Explorers Group or Explorers Secrets of the Truth. You could comment underneath the show notes on Facebook, so it will populate live on our back end here. So hopefully we could chit-chat with you guys live during the show. Same with YouTube at Explorers Seekers of the Truth. We're on YouTube live, as some of you are viewing right now. Comment underneath the show there. It should pop up here. We should be able to talk back and forth, just like with Facebook. We're on Twitter or X at Explorers Group, and you can visit us at our website, explorersgroup.com, which has not been updated in a while. We are working on getting that revised. But that's it. Those are pretty much the big spots to get in touch with us.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So tonight we're going to be talking about Presidential Ghost. And the funny thing was we were actually planning on doing this last Monday, which was President's Day, but we actually set up the show and this idea and didn't realize it was President's Day until this week when we were talking and realized last Monday was President's Day.
Yeah.
So
very coincidental.
Now these are stories of presidents that have continued to be seen and heard in not only the White House, but other locations around the country.
Yes, and what presidents are going to be featured first? Or which presidents, I should say.
Okay. Well, I guess we should start with the beginning with George Washington. For those of us who grew up in the Northeast and in Virginia, we all heard or have seen the signs that said George Washington slept here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Martha Washington and moving to the third floor after George's passing.
All right. So according to a story related by Eleanor Nellie Curtis, Martha ordered the master bedroom sealed and to be never entered again in her lifetime. Nellie said that Martha confided in her that she had seen George's spirit sitting on the bed. She said that he was studying state papers and national and international events, pondering the fate of the nation, which would be quite a sight to see. Actually.
Now, according to that story also, it wasn't that Martha was afraid of her husband's ghost, but it was that she felt that he needed his quiet time to ponder the fate of the nation.
Well, Martha had stayed with George during the Revolutionary War, including his long winter at Valley Forge. And Martha would give him his solitude when he was facing the issues of leadership while he was alive. So.
Wow, imagine that. I mean, Now, before the bedroom was sealed, there were several staff at the house that claimed to have seen President Washington studying and reading in bed.
Mhm.
And Washington is said to have been seen at the rock crypt where he and Martha are buried.
Hmm.
Washington is said to appear as a misty figure glowing with a greenish phosphorescence, most commonly seen on December 14th, the anniversary of his death, and on May 22nd, which is the anniversary of Martha's death.
Hmm. Well, Martha is also witnessed at the rock crypt on the anniversary of her marriage to George on January 6th.
So now Washington is to this day seen at Yorktown with a faint smile on his face as he is seen accepting a rolled up document from a grinning American soldier,
Hmm.
Yorktown being the site of his biggest victory.
Interesting. Well, isn't there a story about Washington appearing at like other battlefields and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of funny because there's the legendary Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain story where he saw Washington at the Battle of Gettysburg. And now there's several different versions of this story out there, but in the major version of the story, Washington is on horseback in his bright blue and white uniform with his tricone hat on a great white horse, personally led the 20th Maine into the position on the line at Little Round Top, which at that point was the far end of the Union line.
Right.
Which the kind of the thought process on that is if that line, if that end of the line was turned, it would have led to a Union rout at Gettysburg. And of course, that's not 100% true if you actually like look at any of the placements of reserves and the train that they would have had to fight through even if they would have turned the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
It was still there was a great mass of Union soldiers between them and actually routing the Union at Gettysburg. But yeah, he was seen at Gettysburg, and like I said, there's several versions of that story. I kind of cherry picked the Chamberlain's writings on it, where he kind of admitted to this at a certain point.
Well, what kind of confuses me is what would Washington's connection to the Civil War be? Or was this Gettysburg during the Revolutionary War?
No, Gettysburg was during the Civil War.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I don't understand why Washington's connection would be to it.
Well, if you think about it, his step great granddaughter is Mary Ann Curtis, who was the wife of General Robert E. Lee, who was the commander of the Confederate Army at Gettysburg. The question would be why would he be helping the Union? Well, in his farewell address to his fellow Americans, he spelled out a warning against sectionalism.
Okay.
Citing that the North needed the South, and the South therefore needed the North. Your Union, and this is a quote from it, your Union ought to be considered as a main prop of your liberty, and that the love of the one ought to endear you to preserve the other.
That's weird. I could, now it makes sense after you explain it with the relations there of the lineage. But and I guess part of that story too was he was seen, Washington was seen holding his sword aloft, his flaming sword, pointing the way forward for the Union troops and stuff like that. I don't know. That one just kind of made me scratch my head because I was like, it's just an odd relation. Like it's a completely different war. Almost 100 years after the Revolutionary War, right? It was 1776 and then 1867.
1860 through 65. 63 would have been Gettysburg. Well, yeah, and it's kind of something, we're talking is it the ideal of Washington, the great American, the great general, the uniter, who united all these factions during the Revolutionary War to, beat the British, and, he was in command of the Continental Army, which means he was in command of, basically separate groups of people who, some were his friends, some thought he was an idiot, some people, thought he was fighting the wrong war or the wrong type of war for this, and yet everything he did led to the permanent foundation of the United States.
Interesting.
So, it is one of the things I find quite interesting is when you think about like Ghost,
Mhm.
kind of get into a little bit of discussion on this. Most people, it's a specific, I see this person at this house.
Mhm.
Well, here you have Washington not only seen in the White House at certain points, at the Rock Crypt at certain points,
Mhm.
at Gettysburg at certain points.
Mhm.
I'm sure, like I said in the opening, with all the, Washington slept here places, I'm sure if I sat down and really researched it, I could probably find 20 Washington ghost stories at places he allegedly spent a night during his lifetime.
Yeah.
But like also like to me, most ghosts would have a connection to a location.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like the White House or Yorktown, his greatest
Can
victory.
you say that
Well, here
again,
he
dude?
is at
You were
Gettysburg.
breaking up pretty bad there. I'm sorry. I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Oh, what I was saying was basically like I could understand the connection to like ghosts are generally seen in a place with a great connection to their life.
Mhm.
So the White House, Yorktown, his burial crypt, ghosts are seen in cemeteries.
Right.
But like Gettysburg, as far as I know, in my years of reading and stuff like that, I've never heard of Washington being in Gettysburg
Right. And of
at any
anybody
point.
you would know. I mean, you are a
Yeah.
freaking Gettysburg aficionado.
Yeah. The only things you hear is this story of him being seen leading, the 20th Maine claiming to have seen him. And it was, like I said, this comes from like one of Chamberlain's writings on the subject where it was kind of brought up by other people at a reunion. And then he kind of like one day wrote it out as, yeah, there was this guy. And in the story, they don't make it or it's not directly said in the beginning that it was Washington, but then later it's kind of like added to the, well, if you think about what the guy looked like, it was Washington. But then like we were talking, like why a place he has no connection to, unless it is his connection is to America.
Yeah.
The thought of this concept that he fought so hard to create.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things like everybody always kind of talks about singular ghost,
Yeah.
like, oh, this ghost is seen at this prison, or this ghost is seen at this house, or this hospital, or this cemetery. Here you have, like I said, and I'm sure there's probably 200 other stories I could have found something about
Right.
just on Washington alone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think about the multiple locations with
first thing I want to say, Cindy brings up a really good point here. She says, could it be spirits to help them, but using a form recognizable to the soldiers? And it kind of, I actually like that thought process because it kind of goes along with what you said, Chad, where is it, a recognizable thing? Because, I mean, Washington was huge with rallying the troops. I mean, he was a big influence on turning the tides with the Revolutionary War and driving it and all that stuff. So that makes absolutely perfect sense. As for the what was it, the Yorktown where the crypts were? Or no, that was the Rock Crypt.
Yeah.
Well, they said that they saw them as mists. So you don't really know who or what it was. I mean, if it was just a mist, even though it might have been near their graves or their crypt or whatever, really could have been anything. So I guess they could just it just makes sense, or it would be coincidental or logical to think that, oh, well, there was a mist by the Washington's graves, had it been one of them, you know. So there is no way of knowing exactly who or what they were, but I guess you could assume. But the ones with Martha's story talking about George, I mean, to actually go to the extent of sealing off that bedroom and everything, and her not staying in it anymore because she's seeing him physically in there, or a physical something that she's seeing in there reading that.
Mhm.
I mean, that story just, I love that story. I just, whether it's true or not, I just thought it was awesome. I mean, to actually see uh, a deceased loved one there doing what they were always, passionate about it, that's just really cool. But yeah, the rock crypt.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And
Sorry.
I mean that well, with like that story, there are or were at that point other witnesses that kind of corroborated that story of
Yeah, the
seeing him.
staff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's not the only person that I can recall, and I'm not sure if we talk about later in this episode or not, but there are other people who did seal off rooms post
Mhm.
their loved one dying due to kind of uh, either really seeing a ghost or like a sense memory
Mhm.
of the person.
Yeah, well,
So,
it's definitely not uncommon, and I know for sure, like, as much as you love the person in life and stuff like that, to actually see them physically after they had passed doing anything would freak me out. You know what I mean? Like if I saw one of my parents since they've passed,
mhm.
I don't know how I would react. I think I'd be scared, to be perfectly honest with you. I think I'd be terrified to see one of them. You know what I mean? The initial would be like, "Oh my god, you're not supposed to be here." You know what I mean? So I guess I can
Yeah.
understand. And if it's frequent enough that you're consistently seeing them after death, I'd probably seal a room off too.
Well, would it be that you were scared, or would it be more of a trauma of seeing them knowing that they have passed?
Probably both. I would say both.
See, I mean, I was talking with somebody, a while ago, and they were talking about like when one of their family members passed,
Mhm.
actually like dreaming of the person. So not wake and seeing the person, but dreaming of the person and
Mhm.
having a conversation and like the feelings they got from the dream.
Okay.
So like basically they felt like when they woke up, because that's the thing, would it be scary, would it, or just be the trauma of like, oh my god, that
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be here, you're gone. you know and they said, well, it was more of like they had this peaceful feeling,
Mhm.
and like it was almost like a closure moment
Mhm.
with some of the stuff.
Well,
um
Leslie kind of has had a few after her mom passed away. She had a few dreams that she said it couldn't have been any more real than if it was her mom being there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Where it's almost like a visitation or a message from the beyond. You know what I mean, or
Mhm.
the afterlife or something like that. And she said she felt fine, like
Yeah.
just like she know, like it was her mom really there. Like she felt, you know what I mean, like
Mhm.
pleased to see her.
Yeah, and that's kind of how this person described it to me too. Was it was actually like a not like a dream where your family member, but it was like an actual like sit down conversation with the person, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was like the actual person. It was their face, their build, the way they dressed. It wasn't one of these things where you're dreaming, and in your dream it's your uncle you keep thinking, oh, it's my uncle, but when you kind of think about what the person looked like, it's not them. It's just a random composite of things you've seen in your lifetime. So yeah, these people, like, in that sense, are having pretty much like a dream state, like, visitation. So that's why I often wonder, like, because like when my grandfather passed away, he wore this specific style hat that used to have like these little red, white, and black feathers on it, like on the
like
side
a
of it.
Stetson almost.
No.
No? Or a fedora, like a fedora style.
Kind of a fedora, but they were kind of the furry ones.
Yeah.
Kojak used to wear them, I think.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
He always wore one. He had one from the time I can remember him until he passed away. He always had one. There were so many times where I would be at the mall or just random places where I would see somebody with his build. With that black hat on. And like always at a distance. So it wasn't like real close. So most likely it was just another older man who also liked this hat style. It's a warmer hat because it's got some fur to it and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I would see that, and it was never like scary or anything like that. Of course,
almost like that triggered memory, and you're almost like,
like, oh my god, that's him there.
Mm-hmm.
Where's he going? Like, why is he going away? But
I get you. I've had those.
I wonder
about
that.
I remember one time I was at the mall, like you were saying, and I saw a guy. I could have swore it was my dad. Like, and when I saw him, it was almost that, oh my god, dad! It was like, it's just like for an instant, you're like, almost like you're back, But then and it's weird because like when you're looking at this person, like, oh my god, you see it, you see your parent or whatever, and then it's kind of weird, and then it's just kind of like almost like an illusion or something. It kind of just wears off, and then you're like, oh wait, no. Then you see the real person. It's kind of bizarre. That's actually happened the one time we were at dinner at my sister's house, and it was shortly after my mom passed away. And I mean, my mom and sister look very similar to begin with, but the one time, and actually it was me and my older brother, we noticed we were at the table, and my sister came in and she was talking and stuff, and it was bizarre because both my brother and I almost at the same time just kind of had to take a step because it was mom's face. Like,
like coming through.
But,
I don't want to say her name, your sister. But like coming through
my
her
sister,
almost.
Like,
like you're.
What were you saying?
Oh no, I was like saying like it was her coming through using your sister, like and your mental and your brother's mental image of her was your mom.
Yeah, almost like a pareidolia kind of effect where your brain's trying to see something out of something that isn't, you know what I mean? But I don't know, man. It was really bizarre because this was, like I said, shortly after mom had died, and we used to do the weekly dinners at mom's house, and then my sister picked it up. So she started doing the weekly dinners at her house. And I don't know, man, it was just so bizarre because I remember talking to my brother about it afterwards, and he's like, I felt the same way. And he said that there was a few other times when he was talking to her, and she had mom's face, and you're like, it was just bizarre because you're sitting there looking at her, and it's almost you could physically see it changing from mom to my. I don't want to talk about it. It's going to get me emotional, but it was very strange. It was very strange. I don't know if it was because I was just missing her so much, and I'm trying to bring her back in any way that I can, but it was bizarre.
Even if you think about, like, how many times have you said to one of your siblings that they're acting like one of your parents? Not necessarily, like, even when your parents were still alive, like, where you just had that moment of, oh my God, you sound like mom.
Oh, all the time. Especially with my sister. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like, sometimes it's the wanting to see that person, and kind of your sister does have a resemblance to your mom.
Yeah.
Like, so all of a sudden your brain starts to put the overlay of your mom's face and your sister's face, and kind of, you kind of feel like, oh my God, because I know there's been quite a few times where my sister has said stuff and I'm like, oh my God, you sound like mom.
Yeah.
Like, you sound like mom. Your mechanics of how you delivered that statement was mom.
Yeah.
It's not, so, but I think that kind of stuff. And I mean, seeing somebody sitting there at work, but there are many legendary stories of haunted locations where they see the night watchman sitting at a desk, or
Yep.
some guy sitting in an office, or
which would be more of the residual, where it's just almost like a
loop.
loop, yeah, being
Yeah.
played over and over. And I could like to say could be, ingrained somehow into the limestone or the whatever kind of mineral is in the area, and it just plays it back, or has some sort of an energy, which still is kind of a hard thing to wrap your brain around.
Which actually just triggered a memory of a location that they used to see the owner's secretary who had passed away, like walking from his office to her office out to the one doorway.
Where was that?
And they would see her the main office of the Possible Republican.
Oh, no way.
Yep. They used to, because when we had the security contract there, that was one of the things you always would have to go up and check that office section.
Yeah.
And like the way it was, like several buildings that were all in one. So the way you had to like get up there, you had to go like up the main, the first building that you were sitting in most of the night, you had to go up, and then you had to go over, and then you had to go up again, and then like over to the other side. And yeah, that was always the thing. People would like walk up there and they would hear somebody walk like in front of them.
Yeah.
And like stop at her desk. But it was like from his office door to the desk, and then out to like the one conference room or the exit or something like that. They would hear people walking.
That's crazy.
And people claim to have seen her like walk down to the editorial bullpen and like be standing there at night watching the people work, which she was known for when she was alive. The boss would send her down there to see what people were doing.
Nice.
Yeah, so
we should try and get in there and do an investigation.
I don't even know who owns the buildings anymore, because the Possible Republican, I guess, is gone, isn't it? It was bought out by Shamrock years ago, and they sold the building across the street. I know they sold, and I think they sold 2 or 3 of the 4 buildings that it was in that main strip there.
I'll look into it, see what I can find out. But back to the presidential ghosts. Next, we're going to be moving on to Andrew Jackson. And so over the years, several first ladies and many White House staffers have reported to hear Jackson's spirit stomping about and swearing in the Rose Room, known as the Queen's bedroom.
Yep. So there is no formal record of any supernatural experiences being reported on the behalf of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, the Queen herself had been reported to have experienced several ghost stories back in Glamis Castle, one of her childhood homes. So she had lived in several haunted houses or castles or estates over the years, but I don't think she ever really came out and talked about it.
Well, I mean, if you think about, any of those, the properties owned by the royal family and stuff like that go back centuries. So there's bound to be some crazy stuff in those buildings.
Well, and especially at Glamis, because Glamis was the Lady Glamis was tried for witchcraft. And long story, she was a Campbell. She married the Duke of Glamis or something like that. And when he died, the king wanted the property, couldn't get her to give it up, couldn't get her to like unite with somebody that would turn the property over to him.
Mhm.
So she brought him up on what, or he brought her up on witchcraft charges, had her burned at the stake, had her kids put in prisons. When towards the end of his life, he got all the kids out of jail, gave them back their lands, and one of his last acts was to pardon her, that she was never a witch, and basically that he had just created that story.
Well, it's very similar, very reminiscent to the Salem witch trials. It was a land grab.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people, in order to get people out of their homes or off their property, was to accuse them of something that they weren't or hadn't succumbed to, which was witchcraft or the spell from a witch, and they killed them and took their land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Glom's has like the Monster of Glom's. They also have the card game with the devil. Was a legend. Was one of the legends like Glom.
Yep. All right,
So,
that's freaking awesome. But back to Jackson, a statue of Jackson in Lafayette Square across from the White House is said to come to life late at night. And reports are that the statue is said to be seen rubbing old wounds. So Jackson was the last president to have actively participated in the Revolutionary War, and he was 13 years old at the time. Could you imagine 13 years old being in a major war like that? Oh my God.
mm-hmm. Yeah, well, back then, I mean, 13 was midlife.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Or you probably by 13, you should have been married, had your own business, and
That's true. Yeah.
been on your second or third kid. But just to give you a short list of his wounds, as Les mentioned, in the Revolutionary War, he was slashed with a saber to the scalp by a British officer when he was taken prisoner. Basically, the British officer, the story is, told him to get down. He would release him if he got down and kissed his boots. And Jackson, being a proud man that he was at 13, was like, I ain't kissing nothing. And the guy just whacked him with a saber across the head and put a scar on his scalp. Then he had a bullet wound to the left side of his chest, which he received in a duel with Charles Dickinson, not the author.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Then he also had a bullet wound to his left arm that he received in a gunfight with the Benton brothers.
My God, this is one tough son of a bitch.
Yeah, he was a real man's man. You know, when you think about it, I mean, back then, dueling. The funniest thing was, I think in the duel, he fired first and missed on purpose, or didn't think the guy. It was neither he fired first or the guy fired first, but he thought he was going to miss on purpose. And the guy actually shot him. And then I think he ended up shooting and killing the guy. But then in a, like I said, in a gunfight with the two Benton brothers, he was shot in the left arm.
My God, that's a tough dude right there. Well, another location is said to be haunted by Jackson is the Taylor cabin in Janesboro, Tennessee. Chris Tyler built the cabin in 1777 and ran kind of like a frontier boarding house, and which the 21-year-old Andrew Jackson spent some time at, which could explain a lot. I mean, there's some rough and tumble dudes in the frontier times.
Yeah, and he is seen exiting through the back door and returning through the front door. So basically, walks out the back. Yeah, he's running laps around the house.
Around the property.
Now, in January of 1835, Jackson survives an assassination attempt by an unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence. The assassin, this is a great story. This is another one of these. Dude is more of a legend than even the ghost stories give him credit for.
Yeah.
The assassin pulled his first gun and it misfired. He then pulled a second gun, which also misfires.
Oh, God.
So, to add more mystique to his supernatural abilities here, That evening, Jackson claimed to be visited in his dreams by his late wife, who told him this escape was a sign that he was a man of destiny and would be remembered as a great president.
That's pretty awesome.
Which, in the grand scheme of things, probably not one of the overly talked about presidents, but yet, Battle of New Orleans, presidency, gunfights, duels, drinking, cursing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't he the one who used to have like big like redneck parties at the White House and
He
stuff
had
like that?
like an alligator or something that he kept in the White House and stuff like that. So he's pretty cool in my book.
Hell
But
yeah.
so he's definitely, he's definitely remembered as a great American.
Sure.
At this point.
Well, some people report seeing him and his wife, Rachel, at their former home in Hermitage and at their grave on the property also. And they're described as being like wisps of fog or even almost transparent, kind of similar to the Washingtons. The phantoms are seen holding hands and kissing just before they fade from view, which is very romantic.
Yeah, we should have done that one on Valentine's Day.
I know, we should have.
Yeah, it is pretty cool though. Like, and again, it's another one where, seen in multiple places. Which, like I said, that's one of the things that really interested me by some of these stories is it's the same person. Like this, well, okay, it's the statue, and this, comes to life, and people. Could be a lot of drunks hanging out in that area seeing the statue.
When I read that one, it reminded me a lot of like Night at the Museum. Like after a certain,
that's what I was thinking. Yes, Night at the Museum. When I thought of that, even when I was just saying that, I'm like Night at the Museum. I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah, that was Night at the Museum. Now, one of the reasons why I selected Andrew Jackson, not only because he was pretty badass with all the wounds, but he also investigated the paranormal.
Nice.
Yeah.
So he was one of us.
Pretty much. He was at least wanted to know. He wanted to explore the possibilities. But he became interested.
Explore. But, which, not to cut you off, but I just got a notification that our broadcast was dropped from Facebook. I don't know if it did truly drop or not, but anybody who jumped from one to the other, it seems like YouTube is still live. I see that we still have some live viewers out there, so I hope we didn't lose our signal on YouTube. Cindy, if you still hear me, can you say that? Can you let us know if we're still live on YouTube at least? Just type in and let us know. Oh, no, my wife just said that she still hears us and from Facebook. So I don't know.
I'm.
Oh, yeah, there we are. Yeah. All right. I don't know. I just got a notification saying that we lost our feed. So Be Live. Gotta love Be Live.
Yeah, but to get back to Jackson and his investigations into the paranormal here, right? He became interested in the story of the Bell Witch, a malevolent spirit that was harassing John Bell and his family. Kate, the spirit sometimes the spirit became known as Kate because that was a name it had given during one of the communications. So the spirit sometimes appeared as a cat, a vulture, or even a dog. And it was known for attacking the family by punching, scratching, and biting them at night.
Jesus. It's more of like a poltergeist.
Well, some of it, but the thing was, there was also like when it appeared as a dog, it appeared as this like very large dog that like almost wolf-like. They had shot at it and it didn't go down. And, there was a woman who became the, Bell Witch, and she had a bad land deal with him or a cattle deal or something. And she was supposedly a witch and sent the spirits after him.
Interesting.
he ended up dying mysteriously in the house and stuff like that. So, but Jackson went to confront Kate, and he actually hired a witch lair, which would now basically be the equivalency of a ghost hunter, and brought with him his good friend Sam Houston of Texas fame. So,
well, that's pretty cool. And according to the story, Jackson's carriage turned onto the farm. The wheels seemed to be frozen to the ground. They then heard a deep voice coming from the wood that said, "I'll see you tonight, General." That night, Jackson was bitten and scratched by an unseen entity. He departed in defeat the next day and was quoted of having said, "I would rather fight the British than the Bell Witch." Which, coming from a dude who's been shot, stabbed, all those, everywhere in between.
Yeah. 2 wars.
Right. I mean, I would imagine like going through a war, especially like during the Revolutionary and Civil War, where it was like a what do you call it? Like an organized battle, where you're basically facing off. It's not like wars today where it's more, I mean, like that would be terrifying when you're literally standing there, face to face across a field from people, and they shoot, we shoot. You're basically, you're going to die. And to say he'd rather go through that than face this apparition.
Yeah, well, you also got to think about it this way. At least with the British, he could actually see him.
Very true. Very, very
If
true.
if you're getting punched and bitten at night and scratched by something you can't see, so you can't stop it from doing it to you.
True. Yeah.
I mean, one of these days we're going to actually have to cover the Bell Witch. I don't think we've ever really.
You read my mind. I was just going to say that we should probably save this for a show all by itself, but
yeah, I mean, well, the Bell Witch legend, I mean, continues to this day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Stories,
which we should make our way down there.
Definitely something we could talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
I forget how far away from me it is.
Can't be too far.
I want to say it's weird because I think it's like south of Nashville. And Nashville's like, I want to say 8 hours from me.
No further than I thought.
I'm in the weirdest place in the world because I moved from Pennsylvania. It took me 21 hours to get to the Waco area of Texas, right? Oh, West Texas, the town of West Texas. It would take me 21 hours. I moved 6 hours further south, closer to the highway, and it still takes me 21 hours to get to that part of Texas.
What?
Yeah, it does not make any sense in my mind, but it takes the same amount of time, and I'm 6 hours further south.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about George Washington and his wife, Martha, Andrew Jackson and his wife, Rachel. Now we're going to move on to William Howard Taft, the 27th president of the United States. So you want to start out the Taft story?
Yeah. So the story is around dusk at Theodore Roosevelt's grave at his former home, Saginaw Hill, near Oyster Bay, New York. A tall, rather stout figure appears as a shimmery mist, almost difficult to see in the darkening environment. The figure is said to be downcast and standing in a mournful tribute to the grave. So why did we bring up President Taft when we bring up Theodore Roosevelt's grave, right? President Taft and Roosevelt were at one time very close friends, with Roosevelt selecting Taft as his handpicked successor. But once he had gotten into office, Roosevelt realized Taft was not a Roosevelt clone.
Okay.
Which ends up leading to Roosevelt running against him as a third-party candidate for president, splitting the Republican vote and causing both to end up losing to Woodrow Wilson.
Well, that also, because of that, it created a 9-year bitter rivalry, which was not settled until the death of Quentin Roosevelt during air-to-air combat in World War I. And Taft wrote a letter of condolence that reconciled their friendship. So many believe that this kind of short reconciliation is the reason Taft appears at his buddy's grave.
Mm. And one of the only ghost stories I could actually find about Roosevelt
Mm-hmm.
involved his son Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much evidence there is to this actually being a true story that was relayed by him, but basically he was said to have there, after his son died, would spend time sitting in one of his studies and would be heard like talking, and they would hear, almost the people around them would hear what they thought was Quentin's voice
Mm-hmm.
saying to him, "Are you proud of me now, Dad? Did I make you proud?" Quentin was one of the youngest sons of Roosevelt. He was also considered the softer son of the group. I think he had 3 other boys or 2 other boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Quentin was always the softer one, the more gentle spirit. So Quentin ended up kind of always having a chip on his shoulder, something to prove, and ended up dying in air-to-air combat. And the worst thing was, when you go back and look at the German squad commander's report for that action,
mm-hmm.
he says basically the pilot was brave but very ill-informed and untrained.
Mm-hmm.
So basically this kid went out there to try to, show his dad, "Oh, I'm just as good as my brothers, and you should be proud of me," and ends up getting shot down and killed very easily by a German fighter pilot at that point.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Well, since we did mention Woodrow Wilson, he's the next president that we're going to move on to. We have found that he too has a ghostly tail attached to him, and it's rumored that an almost transparent pale gray figure is seated at the former president's desk. He appears wearing a dress shirt, tie, and jacket. The lower part of his body is covered in an old blanket, and the spirit's face is disfigured by the sagging muscles on the left side from paralytic stroke, and the unaffected side of the spirit's face wears a frown and far-off stare. So it makes you wonder what happened with Woodrow Wilson that would make him feel so forlorn after death.
I think he had the stroke while running for re-election, possibly, or sometime around there, and always kind of tried to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, never kind of could go out in public because he felt weird. So, maybe it had something to do with that. Like, just,
I would do it.
Yeah. You go from being a public figure to being locked away or self-imposed exile so people wouldn't see and take pity on you.
Yeah, you basically become like a recluse. And
yeah,
that would do it. You go, like you said, you go from being like one of the most famed public figures, the president of the United States, and then to, afraid to show your face. So I could see that leaving a scar in the afterlife.
Yeah. So now we're going to get into a very interesting president, Dwight David Eisenhower, who was the 34th president of the United States, and he was in office from 1953 to 1961. So people report seeing a phantom of Dwight David Eisenhower seated at a desk, but as a phosphorescent figure seated at his desk. He is described gazing upward as though he might be pondering the skies with an expression of awe and anxiety. Now, you got to think about it. This could be because of his knowledge of UFOs and aliens. Because if you think about it, Project Blue Book is something that was done during his administration. Plus, there's also all the rumors that he actually met with the Greys and worked out a deal for technology to allow them to take a few humans every year, and we got technology in return. So you also got to think he was the European theater commander during World War II, when we were having incidences of Foo Fighters and ghost rockets and all this stuff. So,
well, wasn't he was the one who was kind of spearheading the need for Project Blue Book because of the UFOs and all that stuff that we're seeing over the lawns of the White House and stuff like that.
well, yeah, he was part of it, but Blue Book was actually the third incarnation of that program. Blue Book was the final version. You had Artichoke, Grudge, and then Blue Book.
Okay.
So, yeah, these were all, the White House law, the Washington D.C. UFO incident and stuff that you'd seen in the show Project Blue Book and stuff was when he was in office.
Phenomenal show, by the way. Anybody who hasn't seen it, was on History Channel. Go look it up. Great show.
History Channel gets rid of so many good shows just for the dumbest reasons, but they'll keep Ancient Aliens on for 50,000 years. They got rid of Nightfall. They got rid of Project Blue Book. I mean, they've had some really good dramas, historical dramas on there.
Yeah.
But they will keep Ancient Aliens, and no matter how many times they're debunked or shown to be completely misquoting things and stuff like that, they keep a show.
I wish they would bring back Monster Quest. That was my absolute favorite.
Didn't they try to do that a few years ago and it just never went anywhere?
No, they tried to. It was kind of like a spin-off of Monster Quest, but I don't think it was done by the original creator of Monster. I think Doug Hijack was the original creator of Monster Quest, and I don't think he did that. Oh gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name because it wasn't as good. But he was actually on the Sasquatch Experience, and they were talking to him about a new project that he's working on that's almost Monster Quest-y to kind of bring it back. So, and that show was actually really good from Sasquatch Experience. So check that out for sure. Just some of the stuff that he was talking about on how they're trying to collect evidence and stuff. You and I talked about that. We want to start putting some of it into practice with our own research. So, but anyways, I digress on that one. But I wish they would bring Monster Quest back and Project Blue Book, because they ended it where they have 2 seasons, and then the way they ended the second season, it was completely wide open for a third, and I don't know why, but they didn't continue it because there was so much more they could have done.
Yeah, they ended it with like the Sag Harbor UFO story and stuff like that, and it was it should have. Basically, it was open for at least a 3rd and 4th season the way they did it, and even Nightfall was open for another season or 2.
That was the one with the Knights Templar.
Yeah,
you turned me on to that one a while ago. That was great. But all right, so
they even had Luke Skywalker on it.
Yeah, that's true. But one more thing for Dwight Eisenhower is they said that he is also still reported to be seen in his den at Gettysburg home looking heavenward. So Eisenhower, all the apparitions with him, and again, I think it's kind of funny because he too was a phosphorescent figure. A lot of these presidential spirits have had that phosphorescent glow or appearance about them when they were seen, and I think it's cool that Eisenhowers are always looking towards the skies because of, you know what I mean, with his involvement with the UFO stuff. But his wife, and how the hell did you pronounce her name? Mamie. His wife Mamie has been seen on the sun porch and in her large bedroom, spotted as a misty form. And again, is it like a mist, or is it like a pseudo-human form with like a mistiness around it? I don't know, because how do you know? How could you say it is this person if it's just a mist?
I think what they're saying is it's a misty form, like it's her but misty. It's not a solid.
So like a feathered edge, kind of not sharp edges.
Yeah.
Well, people have reported hearing the heavy mirrored doors of her closets opening and closing. Mysterious footsteps are heard on the second floor, And once after her death, the staff cleaned and dusted her illuminated curio cabinet and placed the figures back, but in the wrong position. And later, the staff noticed that the figures were rearranged back to the original places.
Which is funny because there's one episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and I absolutely love it. It was based on a story in Gettysburg. In one of the Civil War era houses, this guy had set up a miniature battle.
Like a
Basically,
diorama.
like the figures you can buy there. He had them set up and had like his tables were different parts of the battlefield on different days. And they even had like the trees and the topographical features and stuff like that. And the one day he came home and went up there and was looking at it and yelled to his wife, like, "Why did you move these?" And she's like, "I don't touch your toys."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, somebody moved them. They're not in the right spot. They're supposed to be over here." So he moves them back over there. Well, the wife is up there cleaning. This is her part of the story. She's up there cleaning and she sees like a bright light all of a sudden come out of the wall. And she sees this figure of a Union soldier, Union officer walk over to the table, and in the sense have the hands like behind his back staring at the table, almost like he's looking at a battlefield map. And he's looking and he reaches over and he just moves this one group of soldiers over to this other location, stands back, looks at her, tips his cap, and goes back into the wall.
That is awesome.
The husband comes home. He goes upstairs, looks at it, and goes, "Why did you move these?" And she's like, "I did not move them. But I will tell you what." She tells him the story. He's like, "Okay, I'll leave them there. If you're saying you're seeing ghosts in this house, I'll leave them there." Well, years later, when they've done more and more research on this one regiment, the area where the regiment was historically said to be located is incorrect. And where the ghost kept moving this regiment to on the map is figured to be the correct position. In fact, their monument is actually in the wrong spot. And even when the monument was presented, some of the soldiers were there and they're like, why is our monument over here? And they said, "Oh, that's where you guys were." And they're like, "No, we weren't." And they kept telling people this, but they kept the monument there. And now through years of reading individual diaries, reading the battlefield reports, reading the different regimental commanders' reports, and even the enemy's reports on the battle, they finally figured out where the guys who were actually in the battle were telling the people was the correct location, not where their monument is. But this old episode of Unsolved Mysteries is basically that regiment, and the commanding officer was trying to move them to put them in the correct spot on this topographical diorama.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Gettysburg's a pretty amazing place.
I know. We got to go back. I know we're talking about it. Chad and I actually have some pretty interesting things up our sleeves, and I'm hoping and praying that we could get them to come into fruition. So you'll have to stay tuned for that down the line. But back to Eisenhower. So after the president died in 1969, Mamie lived until 1979, and spending most of her remaining years living in the second floor bedroom suite. And some people report hearing the rustling and crinkling sound of her taffeta dress and the smell of her favorite floral perfume. And her perfume bottles are still on display, yet they are tightly sealed.
And one of the interesting things is, for anybody who does visit Gettysburg, the Eisenhower farm where these events are happening is going, like, if you go up in the Confederate Tower at the bottom side there, and you go up and instead of looking towards Little Round Top, Big Round Top, if you look out the back side of that, their farm is right out there. The Black Angus cows and stuff were theirs. So it's right outside town. I mean, Eisenhower, studied the Battle of Gettysburg. That's where he took his weekends, even when he was in the White House and stuff like that. So I just find it was another one that was connected to Gettysburg, and I figured, how many different presidents can we actually connect to Gettysburg? I mean, I'm sure. Hey, Abraham Lincoln was at my wedding, so.
What? What do you mean? Like a reenactor, or
Abraham Lincoln was at my wedding? That's all I can tell you.
Somebody saw him? Like this?
Pricey saw him. Pricey talked to him.
Like a ghost?
No, his like 15th grade grandnephew or something like that. But,
I thought you meant like somebody who saw a spirit of him or something.
No, but he was a relative. He is an actual descendant of Lincoln's. And when you look at him, I think he's passed away now. Magically, he got shot in the head in a theater, I believe.
Are you serious?
No, fucking
okay. I was going to say, no way.
but they actually used him in several history shows and stuff like that, portraying Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually, when you looked at him, his face and stuff like that looked like Abraham Lincoln. He actually just walked into our wedding reception.
That's pretty awesome.
And he just like walked in, and Pricey saw him, and Pricey started talking to him, and he came up to me at one point. He's like, "Dude, I just talked to Abraham Lincoln." And I'm like looking at him. I'm like, "How much have you had to drink?" He's like, "Nothing." And I'm like, "Are you sure? Because you just told me you talked to Abraham Lincoln." He's like, "No, Abraham Lincoln is right over there." And of course, I look over there, and the guy's gone.
Maybe it was a ghost.
Nah, the guy actually, we ran into him later, and he's like, "Oh, it was your wedding," and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, it was very nice."
Well, you guys had your reception in the Gettysburg Hotel, right?
We got married in there, had a reception in there. Yeah.
So that,
all our pictures are pretty much right around there too.
But isn't his ghost supposed to be seen in the Gettysburg Hotel as well?
I don't think so. I know they see a nurse walking around in there trying to find like linens for bandages and stuff like that. And there's a couple other.
I swore I read a story that he was in there, but I don't know. I know he stayed there, no, right? That's where he stayed when he did the address.
I think the James Getty is where he stayed when he did the address.
I'm all off then.
Yeah. Well, the hotel is actually not the original hotel that was there. Mm-hmm. It burnt down years ago, the one that was there originally, but it was there during the battle also. It was just burnt down, then rebuilt and stuff like that. But they see a nurse walking through there and stuff. Yeah,
we got to get back down there. That town is awesome. All right. Well, that actually concludes our Presidential Ghost Stories show. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And thank you, Chad, for putting the show together tonight. You did an awesome job. I was very excited for tonight's show. I loved it. Next show, I believe we are going to try and go back to the Bridgewater Triangle. We covered the Bridgewater Triangle and all the more, popularized stories from the Bridgewater Triangle. But the next show, I'm trying really hard to get two of my buddies on the show to join us who actually live in the Bridgewater Triangle area, and just talking to them in general conversation, they have some stories that I just am chomping at the bit to share. So we're hopefully going to have two Bridgewater Triangle locals on our next show, and it's going to be titled Back to the Bridgewater Triangle, as I said before. So please tune in. That will be 2 weeks from now, and probably back on our Tuesday night schedule. Now that the Biddy basketball season is over, we could get back to our Tuesday night show. So let's see. We'd be looking at, what is today? The 26th, March 12th for the next show. Would be Tuesday the 12th.
not next week, the week after. So next week would
Yeah,
be
it
would
next
be
Tuesday
around
would be the
12th.
5th and be the 12th. Yeah. So March 12th is back to the Bridgewater Triangle. I hope everybody shows up for that one because I think it is going to be awesome because we're going to talk a little bit about the big stories and get their insight on them and see if they have anything else to add, as well as personal stories that they have about the Bridgewater Triangle and the surrounding areas. So again, tune in for that. And thank you all for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate everybody every week tuning in. And do us a favor, share the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, share this crap out of this with your friends. And if you don't mind, go to Spotify, iTunes, Apple, or Google Play, all the places where you could listen to our podcast and give us a 5-star review. We really need your help and support to kind of push us to the next level. Because we're doing all this stuff out of our own pocket. We need your help if you enjoy the show to get us to the next level, so we could start to hopefully get a little kickback for this stuff that we invest in this show. So on that note, again, Chad, thank you so much for putting the show together. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Chad?
Oh, bye.
Goodbye,
you always do this big thing, and I'm just sitting here like, okay.
I was giving you to say good night.
Good night.
Good night.